Hey everyone, it's CloudConnection here, and well, a little while back I asked you guys to submit some questions for a CloudConnection Q&A in celebration of hitting 10k subs, and well, time to give you guys the answers. Now, I intended to read these questions completely blind, not knowing them ahead of time, but I did unfortunately catch a few of them as I was just sort of looking at my analytics and my comments on other videos. Some of them snuck by the radar, unfortunately. And I actually did record an answer session for this video yesterday, and that ended up being unusable just because I was actually recording on my camera, and in looking back at the footage, I just looked dead. I just did not look presentable at all. So, and it makes sense, you know, I've been having kind of a weird week, and I also just kind of didn't really prep myself well enough yesterday. Just sort of sat down, stuck myself in front of a camera and said, okay, I gotta record shit now. But today I'm a little more refreshed. I'm just going behind the microphone because I do not feel like setting up my my camera right now. So I'm just gonna be reading the questions again. I do know what they are, but you know, hopefully it'll still go over pretty well. Now, I actually did want to give you guys a little bonus insight into what's happening next with the channel, specifically what's the next game I'm reviewing, and, well, you can see the footage in the background right now. I am covering Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars, which I'm sure a lot of you were looking forward to after I mentioned that I would be doing more Mario RPGs throughout the Paper Mario retrospective I did last year. And I'm excited to dive into this one. It's not one that I have a lot of experience with. I've played it a little bit, not a lot. I never grew up with it like I did Mario and Luigi and the first three actually, Paper Marios. So yeah, should be interesting. I'm still recording the gameplay for that right now, and the script is still in a very loose, early stages, so I wouldn't expect that video for a little while. I am hoping to tie it into the game's 26th anniversary, which I believe is May 13th? I think I have that right, so hopefully I'm aiming for that, if not a little bit after that. So that's the plan. Hope you guys are looking forward to that video. Anyway, so enough about that. Let's get on with the questions. And by the way, I did have a third party sort these questions for me. So they're not going to be chronological. So if you asked your question way back when I first announced this, you might not be getting your response first in this video. So just sort of stick around in case you don't get called immediately. I did also have this third party sort them by topic, so questions that ask a similar topic will be grouped together. And also, apologies if I say your name incorrectly. I am just reading these. I don't know how some of them are pronounced. So again, forgive me for that. Our first question comes from Hi Jello, who asks, how many videos did it take for you to feel like you nailed the formula you created, and have you had that feeling multiple times as you grew? Would you correlate those eras to periods of success? It's an interesting question. So the first year that I was making videos, so 2018, well, the first year I was making videos for this channel anyway, I was trying to nail down, see what was working. I did a very basic approach at first. Some of those videos are still up. Some of them I have privated or taken down just because I've either redone them or plan to redo them. But you can tell I was very more just kind of getting the foundation of what CloudConnection became. It was a little more basic, like, comedic game review centric. And then in 2019 with The Wolf Among Us, that's when I really started the retrospective format. You know, that's the first one I called a retrospective, and that's sort of where the retrospective formula came in, when I'm doing more of a deep dive, where I'm exploring themes, analysis, diving deeper on the story, less jokes throughout the script. And that's probably like the second, I guess we would call it the era of CloudConnection began, the beginning of the retrospective era. If the first era is the beginnings of the sort of experimentation phase, next one would be the early retrospectives, and that would probably last from like 2019 to around, it probably took me until maybe like early 2020 to get that down pat. So I guess to answer like the first part of your question, it took me quite a while to get into a spot where like, okay, I feel comfortable doing this way. Because like the Hotline Miami video was, I think, the first one where I really separated it into large segments. And it was also the first time I tried to condense and looking at an entire series into one video, because before that I did Banjo-Kazooie and Half-Life, which were long stretches of, this long series of videos, I should say. And I realized I wanted to do more individual stuff, so that was sort of the beginning of the individual retrospective. Like all through 2020, there wasn't a particular series that I highlighted throughout the year. So that's when you get videos like Donkey Kong 64, Telltale's Walking Dead, actually looking at that entire series, Heavy Rain, Ocarina of Time, again, more individual topics, not trying to look at the series as a whole. Undertale was that year as well. And I think like every time I evolved the format through, you know, just kind of changing up the sort of the approach, I definitely felt refreshed doing it every single time. It was a way to help me keep the content fresh for myself, not just for the audience. I mean, that is obviously important, but I wouldn't necessarily say it would always correlate to success just on like the viewership front, but it definitely helps keep me interested in doing this over and over and over again. If I was doing videos the same way I was doing back in 2018, I would hate doing them. So I am glad that I evolved out of that. And I guess in that way, yeah, I would correlate those eras to periods of success. I think I like that it sort of naturally came this way. It's not that I was trying to force something into it. I try to force the channel to be something that it's not. It's just sort of the natural way these things progress, which I think is really cool. Now, RedVox57 and the Checkpoint Show asked similar questions. RedVox asked, did you have a different idea for how you would have laid out your videos before you got into your style? Like, did you have a more comedic approach at one point, or have other sort of things planned like other YouTubers did? Or have you always had your set goal of how you wanted to make your retrospectives? And Checkpoint asks, is the channel going the direction you planned? Like when you started, did you see yourself making the content you are now, or was it something different than you thought? And where is my pay rise? Well, Checkpoint, your pay rise is in the mail, and the source on that is just trust me. Seriously, check out Checkpoints. She is an amazing YouTuber, an amazing artist. Check out her work on YouTube, check out her work on Twitter. Seriously awesome stuff. You see it every time that I upload a new review and retrospective, so you know that she does a great job with her artwork. But to answer those questions, I can't say that I saw myself doing these real sort of like deeper dives on games when I first started. I really thought that I was going to be more comedic, thought that I was going to be more, again, just kind of a basic, I guess, emulating the normal boots or hidden block style, which, looking back, I am glad that I evolved out of that, just because that market is already way too oversaturated. But also just because I found more inspiration in the channels that were doing these deeper dives. Like this was kind of the period where video essays were really on the rise. But also like long form videos like King K or Liam Triforce were really starting to hit their stride around this time. Or at least they were starting out. And I saw that and I was like, well, hell, I can do that. And I think it was also because the games that I knew I wanted to cover on the channel, games like The Wolf Among Us, or I Have No Mouth, or Grim Fandango, or Limbo and Inside, didn't really lend themselves to a comedic, like, quick-fire review format. That's just not the proper way to appreciate those games. So I knew I had to change up my approach to talk about games like that. So I guess that's also one reason why I switched to the retrospective format, and now into the CloudConnection review and retrospective format, where it is kind of the same thing, just a little bit condensed. But yeah, I had no idea that I was gonna be doing that when I started. Boyk asks, are you a full-time YouTuber, as in a person that lives off making content off his main YouTube channel, or do you have an actual non-YouTube job? No, I am not a full-time YouTuber, although I put in the hours like it's a full-time job. Believe me, working an actual full-time job and doing YouTube full-time but not getting paid full-time to do YouTube is a hassle. And don't get me wrong, doing YouTube content is incredibly fun. I wouldn't be still doing it otherwise, but it is really difficult to get the kind of quality of content that you guys expect now, having done this for 4 years now, without making some time investment into it. Now, would I like to just do YouTube full-time and live off of that? maybe, sure, someday. I mean, it's kind of a weird question because you are relying on YouTube as a platform to get your income in, and that's a difficult situation, just because you are, again, relying on a platform that could instantly, just overnight, for some reason, just disappear, and there goes my revenue stream. I'd really love to do full-time content creation, but it would have to be some sort of multifaceted thing. It wouldn't be just YouTube. I would have to have some other ways to, earn a living, essentially, through either writing or just talking about games another way. It would have to be some other thing. So, yeah, maybe one day I'll get there, but that's a far cry off, I imagine. So Lee Allen and Ryan North 1 both asked about what drew me into watching Lupin III, and Lee Allen even asked what made you decide to do a retrospective. I think I've always known about Lupin as sort of just hearing that it was really influential. Like, I knew it was Miyazaki's first independent film, and I knew that it was an influence on a lot of anime, like Cowboy Bebop specifically, which is still my all-time favorite anime series, and hearing that Lupin was a huge inspiration for that series just got me even more curious. And then it was eventually seeing out-of-context dub clips for Lupin Part 2, watching those, that really got me interested in it, just because those dub clips are... there's something else. I went over this in the Part 2 video, but the Part 2 dub is something else. And I really highly recommend that you watch those out-of-context clips. You can find a bunch of them on YouTube, and they're great stuff. But from there, I decided, okay, let me start with the series. So after digging into where I should start, I started with Lupin Part 4, and really liked that. Went immediately into Part 5, and really liked that as well, and that's when I said, okay, I gotta watch this entire series, which I did over like a 2 or 3 month period, which is not a lot of time to absorb, I think it's like over 160 hours of content. And yet I loved it. I just loved diving into that world, seeing what those characters were up to in whatever situation that they're in. And I realized that, oh man, I want to talk about this in some way. I want to share my opinions on this with the world. And looking into it, there wasn't a ton of Lupin content on YouTube. There are some really great videos on Lupin, but nothing that took a look at the entire series, every single piece of media, and sort of looked back on the shows, the movies, and what kind of influence they had, and do they hold up. So I thought, oh, okay, there's a gap there. I'm interested in doing this. I don't know how the audience is going to react, but I want to do this. And so, yeah, I had been planning it since, I think, February or around, like, early 2021. Didn't launch until October. And while admittedly it did not have a great start in terms of viewership, and definitely the copyright strike did not help with that, it has been awesome seeing those videos slowly grow in popularity. Like, I know a lot of you watching this, maybe not a lot of you, but some of you watching this, found this channel through those videos, and, well, I'm so glad that you decided to stick around. I'm so glad that you enjoyed them. And seeing some of those videos rival the game videos in terms of viewership and, like, audience participation and commenting has been astounding, and I'm super happy for that. It tells me that the series is worth doing, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. We have plenty of Lupin content to get to. So both Crow V, or that might be just Crow with 2 V's, and Frostbitten Cow asked about my favorite game ever, and hands down it has to be Banjo-Tooie. I mean, a lot of it is nostalgia, but every time I boot that game up, I just sort of lose myself in it for the entire time that I'm playing it. It is such a, in my opinion, tightly designed and fun adventure that I know I spent like 40 minutes in a video explaining why I love Banjo-Tooie so much, but it feels like it's like precision designed for everything that I love, and I did grow up playing it a lot. It was one of the games I played the most as a kid, so that has something to do with it as well. But yeah, all time it would have to be Banjo-Tooie. Now, Boyk and Sunburnt Tongue 17 asked about what is my favorite console, and Sunburnt Tongue asked a couple of other questions. We'll get to those in a bit. But favorite console, again, the Nintendo 64 is very nostalgic for me, but so is the Xbox 360, and I think I would have to give it to the 360. Because that was the first console I ever owned that felt like it was mine. It was not the family's console that I just happened to play on a lot. That was mine. I would buy all the games for it. This wasn't something that, what is the family gonna buy for us for Christmas or whatever. No, this was my console, something that I had to maintain, I had to, again, buy everything for, and because of that, I have a lot of really fond memories with it. So for the rest of Sunburnt Tongue's questions, first is, what are some of your favorite games for common genres? Shooters, platformers, puzzle games, etc. This is a weird question. I'm not sure what you mean by common genres. Do you mean genres that have a lot of games released in them? Because there's a lot of other genres that also could be considered common by these standards, but I guess I will answer the ones that you asked about specifically. So shooters, I mean, Half-Life is way up there for me. I mean, like, no question. I don't play a ton of other shooters, so that's kind of a difficult question, so I'll kind of just have to leave that at Half-Life. Platformers, again, the Banjo series, Mario 64, Kirby and the Forgotten Land is a really good one from recent memory. I played that game and really, really liked it. And puzzle games, Portal 2 is still undeniably the king in that regard. I don't play a ton of strictly puzzle games though, so again, that's really the only answer I can give for that. Sunburnt's next question, what is your favorite game series? All time, this is tough, but I think that would have to be Half-Life again, just because I can't describe how much I adore Half-Life and Half-Life 2's design. It's just kind of like the standard for me in judging a lot of first-person shooters, first-person action games, and even just kind of narrative-driven action games, not just shooters, but action games in general, which maybe that's an unfair legacy, but those games just excelled at that so well that it's kind of my yardstick. What are your favorite films for each common genre? Action, drama, comedy. Again, there's a lot of other genres, why not horror? I mean, there's some great horror films out there, like The Lighthouse, American Psycho, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, what about those? There you go, I just added a couple. Okay, but for the ones you listed, action, Die Hard is a big one. I actually just watched that movie for the first time recently, and I totally understand the hype that it gets, and it's deserving of all of it. Drama, Children of Men is my all-time favorite film. That's an incredible one. Apocalypse Now, I don't really consider that an action film or a war film. That is really, to me, like a psychological thriller, which I guess kind of fits within the purview of drama. Again, calling these common genres doesn't make too much sense to me, but Apocalypse Now really deserves to be up there. And comedy, I don't watch a lot of comedies, to be honest. I watch movies with comedy in them, but I don't go out to, watch comedy, so I kind of can't answer that. I guess if I had to pick one, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I mean, that is legitimately a fantastic film, so yeah, that would be my favorite. Connor L. has a couple of questions. First, is the DK Anniversary Retrospective Series still planned? You talk about doing it in 2024 for the 30th anniversary of DKC1, and haven't heard much since. Yeah, so I did mention this in a Twitch stream I did, where, yeah, I was planning to do a DK Donkey Kong series retrospective in 2024 for the anniversary of the Country trilogy, or the first game. I definitely still want to do that, I just don't know if it's going to be the 2024 series anymore. It very well could be. That is going to kind of depend on, I have to figure that out once 2024 gets closer, so I'm not going to really nail down that schedule for that year until mid-2023. It's also possible that I might expedite the Country trilogy if I end up not talking about the Donkey Kong series, because those are games that make no mistake, I will cover the Donkey Kong Country games at some point. I've avoided talking about them for long enough, honestly. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect it until sometime next year at the very earliest, and again, that's not set in stone. He also asks, if you had to cosplay as a specific character, who would you go as? That's interesting. I don't do cosplay normally. It's just not really something I'm into, at least as a participant. But if I had to go as one, I'd probably go as Banjo the Bear. I mean, it would really just be as simple as, maybe a brown shirt with the tan accent for the belly marks, yellow shorts, blue backpack. I mean, it's a pretty simple costume, honestly. And I just love Banjo so much. I relate to him so much as a character because he's that lazy, doesn't want to do anything, but if he has to, he is going to put his mind to it, and he's also a good-hearted boy. I relate to that. That is me. That is basically me. So, yeah, I would probably do Banjo the Bear. C. Cozy asks, favorite video game character? Ooh, this is a tough one, honestly. I mean, I just talked about Banjo and how much I relate to him, so he is very much a top contender. But honestly, I think it might be either Manny Calavera from Grim Fandango or Jill from Valhalla. Manny because he is very snarky and cynical, and he's very funny, but he's also, again, a kind-hearted person when he needs to be, which is really cool to see. And Jill just because she's a really nice, in the world of Valhalla, a really nice anchor for the player to absorb into it. Because it is a weird, sometimes strange world that we relate to in some ways. It does share a lot of struggles that, we experience in the real world. But it is, in many ways, very futuristic and alienating. And she is a very nice, just normal, sort of, just sort of place for us to absorb the world, which is really nice. And also because I just love that game so much, Valhalla. That's another one that I really want to cover. Steelborough asks, how would you rank the Lupin media you've watched/reviewed up to this point? Okay, so as I'm recording this, I have not rewatched Gold of Babylon yet, so it will be from part 1 to part 3. So from worst to best, Strange Psychokinetic Strategy is, way down there, like bottom of the barrel. And then it would be Lupin the 8th, Part 3, Part 1, Mystery of Mamo and Cagliostro are really tied for me. I love them both for very different reasons, but if I had to give it to one or the other, as a Lupin film, I would go with Mamo. And then Part 2. DJ Clarko asks, favorite song? And I don't know if you mean video game song or just song in general, like non-video game music, but I guess I'll answer both. My favorite video game song, I really have been listening to the Final Hours theme from Majora's Mask a lot recently. That is such a haunting and depressing but also beautiful piece of ambient music that when you listen to it with the bells and the earthquake sounds really just makes such a audio experience that is unmatched by basically any other game. It is a great listen. For non-video game music, Silver Mount Zion has been in my heavy rotation for the past month. It's basically been almost all that I've listened to. Them and their sister project, Godspeed You Black Emperor. And I listen to them a lot anyway, but something about this past month is just, I've been really drawn to them. And the song by Silver Mount Zion that I really love listening to is So Some Lonesome Corner, So Many Flowers Bloom, which it starts with just this soft choir coming in, just sort of building on a very somber repetition of notes, and then eventually crescendos into the second part, which is this bombastic orchestral / guitar and drums finale that is, again, really emotional but also kind of heavy hitting, and it's just such a treat to listen to. That entire album, This Is Our Punk Rock, The Rusted Satellites Gather and Sing, is a phenomenal album that I recommend to basically anyone who's watching this right now. Go and listen to them, after you finish this video, of course. Musamania27 asks, favorite aesthetic in your fiction? Examples would be steampunk, or samurai era, or more suave jazzy looks from Lupin, etc. I really love dark and brooding environments where you can't really see that far in the distance, and everything that's within your immediate peripheral, even that's not entirely clear. Again, heightening sort of the horror and terror. I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be from like a horror game or a horror movie, but anything where the view is very claustrophobic just hits me it resonates with me in a way that a lot of other aesthetics don't. And that can go in a lot of different directions. So it's kind of a broad answer, but yeah, that's probably my favorite aesthetic. Gumshoe Gamer asks, was there ever a video you had planned to make, but for whatever reason you decided not to finish / make it? There's been a couple that I was working on and then had to postpone, but the only one that I have ever decided to just stop working on and never finish, I was planning to do a review on Tetris 99 when that game came out. And I was writing the script and I just realized that, oh, I am not good at writing about Tetris and making it interesting. And it just wasn't coming together correctly, so I ended up scrapping that, and that video will probably never be finished. And honestly, I don't know if I will ever cover a game like Tetris on this channel, because I like Tetris a lot, but I'm just not interested in it enough on like such a deep level that an analysis of that game would require. Like, I have no knowledge nor interest in competitive Tetris scene, honestly, just on a personal level. So that obviously wouldn't be covered. And then just like the basic like strategies and stuff, like I don't care about examining them. So that video is probably never going to happen. Hidden asks, what is your process for writing the scripts for your videos? So as I'm playing the game or watching the film of whatever I'm talking about, I have a Google Docs document open and writing notes down as I play / watch. Or I'll write notes down on a piece of paper, which is usually what I do when I'm playing a game, just because that's easier to do and playing the game at the same time. Plus, sometimes I'm playing a PC game where I can't really just switch over to Google Docs really easily and type something out. Once I have those notes and they're all gathered together, I sort of separate them into different sections depending on what I'm talking about. Like if I'm talking about the aesthetics, if I have a note about that, I put that there. Just sort of organize the notes. From there, it's building out the sections of the script. Like again, if I talk about the development, the story, gameplay, aesthetics, and then it's writing the specific sections. I think the segmented approach for the scripts actually does help me a little bit in terms of writing, even if it sometimes feels a little constrictive. It just, to me, is a nice way to make the video flow a little better, like you're going from one set part of it to another. And then yeah, once all the sections are written, I do one large editing pass, and then it's on to recording it. So that's my script writing process. Mayor Hairbear asks, what has been your favorite video to make thus far that you consider to be a bit of a hidden gem on your channel? There's been a few, but I think the one that comes to my mind is I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. And that video, I think, deserves a little more attention. And I knew it was not going to get that attention. It is the definition of a game that is not for everybody. It is a very dark, in some ways very traumatic game as well that can trigger a lot of emotions in people. And I even say that up front in the video. It has the most serious trigger warning I have ever put in a video. But that's what makes it so fascinating to discuss, and that's why I loved doing that video. And I actually legitimately did rewatch it a couple of days ago, and I was even like myself kind of like enthralled, like, oh yeah, that is a good point about this game. Like I was doing that to myself, which is an awesome feeling. So yeah, that's a video that I think is a bit of a hidden gem, and you should watch that if you haven't already. Tap the Man asks, thoughts on Wolf Among Us 2? Okay, I have tried to be very, very reserved in my thoughts and excitement for Wolf Among Us 2. Ever since it was announced that the new Telltale company has formed and that they were doing Wolf Among Us 2, I wanted to be hesitant and I wanted to be cautious just because of how much the old Telltale burned down. I wanted the new Telltale to not make the same mistakes, and you know, sometimes they got me a little worried. Like actually when they announced that they were making a game based on The Expanse, I was really concerned, like, oh great, they're handling too many properties at once for getting their start. That's exactly what Telltale did at the end, and that's one of the reasons why they collapsed. But I will say, after seeing that latest trailer and seeing the 2023 release date, so it took 5 years from announcement to release, I gotta say, it looks awesome, and I cannot wait to play it next year. And you can bet that I will find some way to cover that game, as it comes out. I know it's going to be episodic. I don't know if all the episodes are going to be launched at once, but we will see. I will find some way to cover that on this channel. Ryan C has a couple of questions. What video did you enjoy making the most and why? The Half-Life Decay video was really fun because that was the first one where I did some sort of live content. Not live content, but highlights from me playing the game. I played that with my brother for about 3 hours total, and condensing that 3-hour playtime to 5.5 minutes worth of funny moments was really fun, and I do still go back and watch that video from time to time, and it is only because of the highlights at the end. I really don't care what I have to say about Decay anymore. It is just so I can experience me and my brother just dicking around. And then, is there anything that you personally want to cover but are worried it might be too niche? It's interesting how much the niche stuff that I've covered already has varied in terms of performance. Like I already was talking about I Have No Mouth and how that video is kind of plodded along. but other topics that I would swear that no one would be interested in, like 3D Movie Maker. That is the purest example of a passion project for me. I made that video solely for myself and no one else. I did not expect that video to gain any traction. I actually kind of expected it to really tank. And initially it wasn't doing spectacular, but over time it has done very respectably. I think that's one where a lot of people came into the channel through that video, where they found that because they were looking for videos on 3D Movie Maker itself. And they found that video and they would leave comments too, like, oh, I used to play this program when I was a kid and now I'm a full-time animator, which those comments were awesome to read. It was so cool seeing people come together over this. I guess I thought was more obscure than it actually was. But I guess to answer your question, I can't think of anything that I'm worried would be too niche. A lot of the stuff that I really want to cover, especially within the next couple of years, are not niche at all. Even if they're not super mainstream, they have a dedicated audience. So I'm not worried about that. It may happen someday where I come across a topic that's like, oh wow, I gotta cover this, but no one knows about it. But I haven't gotten there yet. WeeMan365 asks, what's your favorite Sega Dreamcast game if you have one? Okay, so I've never owned a Dreamcast. I have barely played any Dreamcast games. So technically, it would have to be Sonic Adventure 2, but that is a big stretch because I have only played Sonic Adventure 2 Battle for the GameCube. So not the original version. If that technically counts, then I guess that would be it, but again, that would be with a big asterisk on it. Ravensquill asks, what's the one game you wish you had the opportunity to play but couldn't? On the reverse, what game do you regret playing and why? Well, this is a game that I have since played, but I do remember seeing Conker's Bad Fur Day on the shelf in Blockbuster around like 2002, 2003, and I saw that it was by Rare, and I knew that they made Banjo-Tooie and DK64, which we owned, and that got me interested, but I saw that big rated M for mature sign on it, and I knew my parents would never, ever get it for me. They were smarter than that, so in retrospect, probably good that I didn't experience that game when I was like 6 or 7 years old. I would not have been ready for it then. By the time I really looked into it when I was like 11 or 12, that was the perfect time, honestly, to get into that. And then as far as games I regret playing, one that I do regret playing is a game called Those Who Remain. It's a independent horror game, and even I do feel bad about saying that I regret playing it because I know it was made by either like one person or a small team, I'm not exactly sure. And, it's not that it's a poorly created product, it's just that it's not well designed. Like, it works, it has a beginning and an ending, it's not like it was released like super buggy, but it's just that it was not fun to play. So I guess it would be that, but again, I just don't like using the term regret there. Do I regret playing it? No, but I do wish I spent my time a little wiser. I guess that might be the same as regret, but yeah, a complicated answer there, I know. Mo has a couple of questions. Is there any game you absolutely hate? No, not really, unless it's like a game that has super objectionable content, like a game that is like super profane, incredibly sexist or racist. The games that are providing offensive content for absolutely no fucking reason. Like, those games I hate, but that's like, that's a low-hanging fruit to hate, essentially. And honestly, I just think that hating games that you just don't care for is such a stupid and overblown tactic that needs to go away. There was a really good tweet that made the rounds a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure some of you saw it if you're active on Twitter. That, people need to play more like unfinished asset flip type games so they can really understand what a bad game is instead of just ascribing it to a game that they didn't like. And that's a honestly fantastic point, and I believe in that 100%. There are games out there that are either 100% should not have been released in the state that they had just because they do not work, period. Not even like a semblance of, the game is working. No, they just do not work. Or that are so, again, incredibly horrid content with no reason to exist, purely for the sake of getting a reaction out of the player and not saying anything intelligent. Hate those games. Those are bad. Something like, okay, look, I don't like Super Paper Mario, but I don't hate that game in the slightest. Next question from Mo, are you going to do anything special for video 100? I'm weary of doing video count milestones just because I have had a case where I've, again, privated or deleted or removed some earlier videos, and so celebrating the 100th CloudConnection retrospective wouldn't be correct if I do that again. I think sticking to yearly or subscriber milestones is probably better for now. And last question from Mo, are you going to do a retrospective on Ghost Trick Phantom Detective? I haven't played it as of making this video, and I guess never say never, but I would not expect that for a long time if I decide to do a video on that. And honestly, I would make a video on the Ace Attorney games, which is, the other franchise that Shu Takumi was involved with, long before I did Ghost Trick. Because the Ace Attorney games are games that I really like, and games that I do want to do, some sort of video on. But that's far in the future, probably. Well, Tall295 asks, plans on covering more RPGs? Sure, we'll be covering more RPGs. You actually just saw from the beginning of this video that I am going to be covering Super Mario RPG. But yeah, there are other RPGs I want to get to. I do eventually want to do a full video on Xenoblade Chronicles, and the other Xenoblade games as well. I really want to cover Fallout as well. That's an RPG series that I've been meaning to get to, especially after the Skyrim video. Maybe do a Final Fantasy game here and there. I would never probably do a Final Fantasy series retrospective, or at least not the entire series at once, even if I'm sticking to the mainline series. And yeah, I'm sure there are other RPGs I'm going to cover, so yeah, I'll be covering more RPGs. Hoodley has 2 questions. What's your favorite stand? And if you don't watch JoJo, what's your favorite boss battle song? Well, I do watch JoJo, but I will answer both of those questions. My favorite stand, you know what, I really like Crazy Diamond. It is a pretty simple, but in my eyes, brilliant stand ability. Just the sort of basic concept of you can heal something with it, but it has to come back in a different form is really interesting to me. Because it's not like it's incredibly complex, it's not like it solves every single problem, and sometimes it can make a problem worse depending on what you're trying to do. But that's what I like in stand abilities. I like stand abilities that are simple at the core, but do have some level of complexity when you dig beneath it and really think about it. And for favorite boss battle song, what is the name of the song that plays when you fight Hades in Hades? What is that called? Is that just called God of the Dead? I'm gonna look this up real quick. Yeah, God of the Dead. That's probably my favorite boss battle theme right now, at least, off the top of my head. RC32 asks, if you have played them, what are your thoughts on the Yakuza games, and what would be your favorite? I have not played the Yakuza games. Been meaning to. It's been recommended by a number of people, actually. It might be a situation where the first Yakuza game that I do end up playing would be I'm playing it to make a review out of it. But I don't have any solid plans to do that at the moment. Just know that it is something that I am interested in doing. And last 2 questions here from Rayar Reviewing. Congratulations, Mr. Clout, on getting 10K. Thank you so much, Ray. Now that you're rich and famous, is it hard to walk around the streets? It is hard to walk around the streets normally, alright? I get recognized all the time. They all say, hey, aren't you CloudConnection from the YouTube channel CloudConnection? And that's because I walk around wearing a big sign that says, my name is CloudConnection and I make video game reviews on YouTube. That actually makes it hard to walk around the streets as well, because it is a huge sign. I made it way too wide. It is hard to walk in a lot of doorways. Ray's other question is, if you had a bunch of game developers working for you, what fan game would you create? It could be a remake or unofficial sequel. See, the thing is, if I did have a bunch of developers working for me and the resources, I would create my own goddamn game. I wouldn't make a fan game. I have a bunch of ideas for games that I would want to make that aren't tied to a specific series. So that's really what I would do. But to answer your question, I think I would do Banjo 3E. That's another one where I thought of ideas like, oh, if I was going to make Banjo 3E, what would I do? Like, where would I set it? What world would there be? What features would there be? What new moves could you teach? But again, the real answer is I would take those resources and create an original game. Alright, and that's all the questions that you guys asked, or at least all the ones that I have captured here. If I did miss your question, please post it down below and I will try my best to answer them. So that's going to be it from me, guys, tonight. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you to everyone who submitted a question. These are some really cool questions, and I'm glad we got to do this. And yeah, I'll see you all later. Bye!